Hey everyone, welcome back to Swat Studs. I'm here with another tutorial, and today we are going to look at neither a lighting nor a lookup tutorial. This is kind of a trick which you can use in render to get real-time focus shifting effect in the render itself. So what I mean by that is that when you want to like change the focus or use the depth of field inside Maya, what you do is you create a ZDepth pass and then change the depth of field in Nuke or any other post-processing software later. So here the advantage is that you can adjust the focus point in the render itself. While looking at the render, you can adjust the focus point and you can shift the focus from one object to another in the render. So for this, we are going to use a locator and an expression inside Maya. So with that, I have created this simple animation here. So you can see here that the spaceship, when you're entering onto the scene, is out of focus. Then when the camera zooms in onto the spaceship, it comes in focus. And then later when it goes in between these foreground buildings again, it loses focus again. And then when camera zooms out, it keeps the focus onto the spaceship again. So all this thing I have done with a locator pointing onto the uh, pointing on objects where I need the focus on particular frames. So here I'll show you the technique which I have used to create this expression with a locator to drive the focus shift. And I'll explain how I have created this symbol setup using Mesh. And then I'll talk about the symbol lighting that I have done here. So I'm not going to you talk about any animation in this tutorial because I'm not expert in animation. This was done as a symbol setup, which just to test how this is working and to what extent you can use this method in animations. So what you are seeing here is completely rendered from Maya itself with depth of field. Um, there was no post processing or any other softwares used for creating this focus shift animation in this tutorial. So let's go to Maya and see how you can create this in the Maya. So first we are going to look at our simple scene here. By the way, we have some buildings that I have downloaded from Kitbash. These are all free downloads, and I'll put the link in the description so that you can also download and use this if you want to try it on your own. And the spaceship I have downloaded from Sketchfab. This is also a free model. And all this comes with textures, but I haven't used any textures here because it increases render time and I wanted the scenes to be as simple as possible so that I can render it faster. And so the thing we are going to do is we are going to create a symbol setup inside Mesh. So for that, I'm going to use these 10 buildings here. And one thing you have to uh, make sure while using Mesh is that none of the objects has any transition or rotation values, and these are all should be placed in the grid. So here you can see all the objects are placed in the grid itself, and again the center pivot or the pivot point of the objects should be in the bottom side, so that when we are doing the Mesh instancing, it will take the point and instance it onto the place where we are instancing it. Suppose if I am instancing it on this mesh, each point will be instanced onto maybe vertex or face. And if I am keeping the pivot point middle, the middle point will be connected to the face so that half of the mesh will be under the geometry. So uh, be cautious about that. And with to create the mesh network, with I'm going to select all these buildings and I'm going to create a mesh network. Going to the options, I'm choosing the instancer option and distribution type as grid, and then apply and close. So we have a mesh builder here, and I think we got a mesh network created. So this is the instance that got created now. I'm going to check the distribution here, and let me just increase the distance a bit, maybe in hundreds. So I'll put maybe thousands so that I get enough distance here. And also I'm going to increase the grid size so that we get more buildings in between. And also I'm going to increase it in the z-axis as well so that we get more depth, more buildings in the depth as well. And I'm also going to give a pretty good value here. So let me reduce the grid to be 3. That's what I have used in my final file. And I'm going to decrease the distance between each grid on the z-axis here. This would look nice. And one thing I am noticing here is that it is only instancing the first building here, whereas in if you come to the instancer, all the buildings are added here. That is because currently we haven't added an id node which will take all the objects which is present there. So I'm going to come to the build 01 mesh node and then click on id and add an id node. So by default it has taken the count as 10 because in the instancer we have 10 buildings. And back to the distribute node, before that I will create this, I will change the id type from linear to random so that the selection of the instancing on each grid position will be random selection. And I can change the positions by changing the random seed here. So I'll put something like that for now. And then I'll maybe increase the distance a bit more and increase the building size, number of buildings a bit more. So by default I guess we have, let's reduce the buildings or increase the number of buildings a bit more. So yeah, I guess we have quite the number of buildings that we needed. And now we have to create one another for the background. So for the background, what I've done was that I've duplicated this instance. So by default, if you just press Ctrl D and duplicate this, you will get nothing. So what you can do is you have to do the duplicate special here. So I'm going to go to the edit menu and then duplicate special, go to the options and make sure you have checked duplicate input connections so that it will duplicate the instancer node with the connections to the actual mesh node so that we get our buildings as it is in here. So any changes we done to this instancer will also affect this as well. So currently if you look at through the camera, this will look the same. So if we want to change that, what you can do is, let me just put the camera back to how it was. I can scale it a bit and then change the scale value on the Z to minus so that it will flip. So we'll have a differentiation between the foreground and background. As well as I can do is I can flip it on the minus x as well. So let me just put the minus 1.577 value here. So if you see now, it is going to be looking different. So let me take the camera back a little and maybe I'll move this a bit to get the position more into what I need. So this is more like a thing that you can do to make the composition work well. So I'll probably try to change the seed to see if I can get more better composition somewhere. So I'm gonna move it a bit more. Maybe I'll also adjust the seeds a bit more. My viewport does seems to be buggy this time. Like today, I don't know what's happening. Okay, this seems to be in a good position right now. So let me take the spaceship and let me put it into the right rotation, and let me bring it inside the camera. So here you can see it's inside the camera now. So let me just stop the framing here, and we'll add the focus shifting element now. So for that, I'm going to go to the create menu, measure tools. I'm going to create a distance tool, and by the time you can see the cursor changes to a plus sign, plus symbol. So you can click 2 times on viewport, anywhere on the viewport. So it creates 2 locators. Let me just scale the locators a bit so that you can clearly see. And then a distance dimension node, which has this distance between these 2 locators. So I'm going to parent this one locator to the camera. So for that, I'm going to hold the V on the keyboard. You can see how the square shape changes to a circle here. So it will snap onto any vertex point nearby. So I am going to click and drag and move it onto the near to the camera so that it snaps onto the camera's sensor point. This is where the sensor seems to be like sets to be uh, placed. So and then I'm going to add middle mouse click and drag and drop this locator into inside the camera, so that when I move the camera, the locator moves with it. And the another one will be the locator, which we will be using as the object to aim the focus point to. So this will be used as the focus point shifter, and this will be the distance which we will be using as the focus distance from camera to any particular object. So first thing, to create the expression inside the camera, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the distance dimension shape node, and I'm going to copy the name, and then I'm going to go to the camera, and I'm going to Arnold, and then let me just delete the expression. This was already created here. And also let me just delete the focal length animation as well from the camera now. And let me just see if that changes my focus framing. This is good. So again, selecting the camera shape, coming to the Arnold tab, and by default the enable DOF will be off. You can enable it, and then The focus distance by default, I guess, is 5 or something, and you can right click on the focus distance and select create new expression. So because we did the create new expression from this attribute focus distance attribute, by default it is highlighted or came here. You can select the attribute name and then middle mouse click, then drag and drop the attribute name onto the expression tab here, and then you can type uh, an equal, and then we'll paste the distance dimension shape one name here. Then what it creates is that this attribute's value will be equal to the distance dimension shapes distance attribute. So if you come to the distance dimension shape, this is the attribute that we are going to use to drive the focus point. So coming back to the camera, again creating new expression. So paste the name, then dot. I'm going to add the distance attribute, and then I'm going to click on create. So you can see now the distance here is the exactly what is uh, you are seeing here. So let me just copy this tab, and I am going to select the locator, and then I'm going to move it. So you can see the focus distance is changing with moving the locator. And the good thing is that if I move the camera a bit, the distance between the locators changes and the focus distance updates then as well. So by default, the aperture size will be 0, and let me put that back to 0, and then again I'm going to do a render. So before we go into the render, we need lights in the scene here. So I'm going to create a simple light setup by creating a sky dome first, and let me reduce the intensity value here, and I'm going to create a color which is around, let me put around 230, and I'll put the saturation is around 0.7. And then another light will be our directional light, and for that I have kept around a value hue value of 14 and saturation 1. So let me disable the camera here so that our light won't be visible on the render. And let me just scale the directional light a bit so that I can adjust it while looking at the in the camera itself. So yes, let me scale down it a bit. Now we can do a render. So first we will adjust the lighting a bit first, and then we'll go to the focus shifting. So this our render is coming good, and I think we'll need more light onto this camera front side here. So here I guess the shadows are a bit heavy, sharper, so I'll adjust the angle a bit, and then let me see if I can increase the exposure a bit. Yeah, so that gives that nice look in lighting. So I'll adjust the lighting a bit to the left again so that we get more contrast between the shadow and the highlight areas. I'll maybe adjust the exposure a bit more and see if that gives us the punchy look that we have here. So this is more or less looking similar to me. So this is a simple setup, and I have added a different background later in the post. uh, just a flat color with a gradient that you can do in any post processing softwares, or else you can add a plane in the background and add a gradient there as well. So if, let me just put it right away. So, so I'm keeping it in a distance so that it will affect the depth of field as well. And I'm going to assign a new shader. So since it doesn't have to affect the lighting, so the surface shouldn't get affected by the light, I'm going to assign an AI flat shader, and I'm going to assign a ramp. Let me see if I can see it. So here the bottom part is more of a greenish bluish color, so I'm going to assign a bluish color on the bottom, and top part is more orangish, so I'm going to assign an orange color on the top. So let me see how that is coming on the render now. So yeah, it's a bit more saturated, so let's reduce that. This I would think need more saturation, and a bit. So you can see more or less we have that color, and yeah, so it doesn't, you don't have to use any other softwares, you can create this completely inside Maya itself. And now you can finally go to the depth of field and add some depth of field. So I'm going to go to the full aperture here, one, and I don't think we are seeing much difference in here, so maybe we'll have to adjust it a bit more. So I'm going to increase the depth of field to, let's say, 5, and now you are seeing some depth of field in here. And let me again add it a bit more depth of field, and now with the renders going on, I'm going to adjust this locator and see if I can get other objects in focus. So here you can see when I'm moving the locator to here, this building has got in focus, so is other buildings on this line, and the other two for background element, and the spaceship has got out of focus. And if I put it back onto the spaceship, you can see the spaceship comes back in focus, and also if I put it right here, again the background elements are in focus. So if you want to do an animation with the focus, it's pretty easy. You set a frame, set the key on the locator, and then put it into another frame and set another key, set into another frame, change the locator position to where you want the focus to go to, and then set the key again. So that's how the focus animation should work. And what I have done, an extra thing, is that when I am shifting the focus from one object to another, let's say on my first frame it's here, and I have kept a key here, and on 20th frame it shifts to the spaceship, so I set a key here as well. It won't like, if you see here, it just goes from point 1 point A to point B just straight away. So what you can do to be creative is that on the fifth or fourth frame, let's say, I'm just assuming it's on the fifth frame, there is a slight shift from the point here to back. So it's just like how the principle of animation says, one of the principle of animation, which is anticipation, which says if you are going to run, you will move a bit back and then move forward. So that kind of effect you can mimic in the focus shift as well. So for that, I'm going to copy the key from here and paste it on the frame 5, and then I'm going to move it back a little. So what's happening here is that I have motion blur enabled so that the key is not moving. So yeah, so I have moved it further and then I am keying it. So what will happen is that this is now in the foreground. The focus is on the foreground, and on the key 5 everything will go out of focus because the focus is going to shift towards the other object, and then slowly it will come into the other object in focus. So usually when you are adjusting the real lens focus in the camera in the real world, there is something called focus breathing, which kind of, this animation kind of mimics that effect. So you can be creative and use this thing as well in the animation if you want to do it. And I have done this in this animation, where in this section here you can see that the focus is shifting here, and again when the camera is going to move backwards or zoom out here, there is a focus breathing here. You can see here it's in focus. I can like keep the object in focus while zooming out, but I did this to get some breakups or something creative on the animation, and it looks good. So that is all that we talk here today. It's like I have covered the focus shifting technique with expression in Maya, and then the lighting we have looked at, and the mesh animation. So I guess we have finished our tutorial here, and if you liked it, let me know in the comments, and do like the videos and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more lighting and look dev related contents, and share with your friends as well who are also interested in lighting and look dev. And I'll see you with another exciting tutorial pretty soon. So till then, this is Swat signing off. Bye.